I mentioned earlier that Philippi had a school of medicine, and it was probably the home of Dr. Luke. So I want to introduce to you today a doctor who is a part of our church, and I want to invite him up to share a little bit of his story. Would you join with me and welcome Dr. Jeff Huxford? Hey, man.
Hey.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Good to have you here. I appreciate it. So this past week, I'm working on my sermon. I'm like living in Philippians 1, and I'm just really asking God, help me illustrate this, you know? And I had this meeting on my calendar, and Jeff and I had not met up until this past week, and he came to my office, and we just started chatting about his story. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm officially erasing the second half of my sermon, and I'm just going to invite him to come up and share, because there's nothing that I'm going to be able to say that is going to be better than what he is about to tell you when he shares his story. So no pressure, right? So you look pretty young for a doctor. What are you, Doogie Howser? What is it like?
So I'm older than I look, I think. I'll be turning 40 in June.
You'll be 40, all right. Well, you're a hefty man. Okay. So up until last year, you were practicing medicine,
Right.
and you stopped. Can you tell us why? Can you tell us your story?
Yeah, so up until, last January, I was practicing medicine. I was living in Northwest Indiana with my wife and 2 children. I was practicing family medicine in a small town. I was kind of doing what I had pictured I'd be doing for the rest of my life. And then something happened, and actually, before this something happened, something kind of foreshadowed it. Me and my wife were having a small group at our house one night, and we were talking about testimonies and about, sharing your testimony. And I don't know if I could say I was complaining, but I was whining about not having a testimony to share. Like I was jealous of people that had a profound way of coming to Jesus. I was born and raised in the church, and there just wasn't anything exciting about it. And that was about, I don't remember saying this, but this is what my wife said. My wife said I said these things. And
then it happened.
Yeah, it happened. So a week later, I was in a near fatal car accident, a pretty serious car accident. It was my day off from work, and it happened at a flashing red light. A guy ran it and ran me into a concrete utility pole, and my head went through the driver's side window and hit the concrete pole, and I suffered a severe traumatic brain injury. I had to be cut out of the car and lifelined up to a hospital in Chicago, and I was in hospitals for like a month recovering from the brain injury, and so there's my testimony.
So you were in the hospital, ICU or something for a month?
Well, at first I was in the ICU, then I went to like a step-down unit, and then for the next 3 weeks I was actually in a rehab hospital, trying to improve, trying to get better.
And so you made a recovery back to practicing medicine. How long did that take?
Yeah, so the doctors were unsure they were unsure at the scene whether I was going to survive, and I did, and they were unsure of what I would regain as far as what I had before. And actually, when I started recovering, it went really, really quick and really, really fast. I was totally blessed. Not only saved my life, but with a very quick and not a very quick recovery. And actually I got to go back to practice medicine within 5 months.
Wow. Okay, so you're practicing medicine again, and then what happened?
Yeah, so I'm practicing medicine. I started out working part-time, and I gradually worked my way up to nearly full-time. I was never seeing as many patients as I did before, but I was working close to the same amount of hours, and I eventually had to cut back down to part-time because I was having some problems associated with related to the brain injury. And eventually I had a neurologist that was noticing some things when he examined me and talked to me that he felt it was probably time to stop practicing medicine. So I had to retire from medicine in January of 2016.
Wow. So you spend a third of your life training to become a physician, and your strength is your brain, your mental ability.
Yeah.
And then you lose your strength and you can't practice medicine anymore. How did you process that?
Yeah, it was a tough time. I'd have a lot of different emotions going on during that time. And I was just frustrated and disappointed that I worked hard to get where I was and used my brain to achieve what I had achieved, and I no longer had that. I was confused and scared about what the future would hold because, I had plans for my future. I was going to be practicing medicine and living in this small town and raising my family. That was my future. And now that I couldn't practice medicine anymore, that wasn't a possibility anymore. And part of me was almost a little ashamed or embarrassed by the fact that I couldn't practice medicine anymore. With a brain injury, a lot of times when you look at somebody, they look fine. So I was a little embarrassed and ashamed that maybe I didn't try hard enough, or maybe there's something I could have done differently that could have prolonged my career.
So you and your wife and your kids, you moved to our community. You started attending our church several months ago. And this is sort of just a sidebar. You guys took a pretty dramatic step of faith recently. If you feel comfortable, would you mind sharing that?
Yeah, I can share that with you. A few weeks ago when Darren was talking about the Freedom Campaign and how we're getting close to getting the debt paid off, me and my wife we left that service and we felt like God was trying to tell us something, to do something. And so we started thinking about our financial situation and some things going on in our lives. And I had a student loan that I still have that was from college and med school, and I still owed on that. But there was a possibility, based on my injuries, that the school could forgive that loan. We had tried once to send them the information they asked for, and they denied it. And they asked for some more information, so we sent them that. And we were just waiting to see what they would say about that. So me and my wife we were feeling really confident that God was going to take care of that for us. So we decided to take the money that we'd saved up to pay off that and give it to the Freedom Campaign. So we did that.
Wow.
And about a week after that happened, we got a note from the school saying our student loan was forgiven.
Come on. Do you ever have moments where you hear something and it just takes your faith to a whole nother level? I listened to that. He was telling me that story last week, and it was so moving to me, and I just feel like I'm a child when it comes to believing God for great things. And I'm just reminded again of what God does. So thanks for sharing that. When we were hanging out last week, you imagine me. I'm like trying to write this, and I'm going, God, help me understand, help me illustrate what it looks like to see life come from death. And then he walks into my office, right? I'm like, got it, So he hands me like this little card that he has, sort of like a business card. And on the card, it has the verse, Genesis 50:20. Many of you would know that verse. It's one of my favorite verses from the Old Testament. And it is the words that Joseph speaks to his brothers after they had betrayed and trafficked him when he was a kid. And he now becomes prime minister of Egypt, and he has all this authority. And he says, hey, I'm your brother Joseph. And they think he's going to kill him. And instead, he says these monumental words of what you intended for harm, God intended for good. And that's on your card. Why would you have that verse on your card?
Yeah, so when I was making those, I laugh when you call them business cards, but I don't like the information cards. I don't know what you call them. But anyway, so I was deciding what verse to put on there because over the past 5 years since my accident, God has just been speaking to me and changing my heart, and I've been reading scripture that I've read my whole life, and I'm just seeing it with new eyes and just seeing it in a whole new light to it. So there's been several verses that have had an impact on me. There's the verses from Corinthians talking about strength in your weakness. That was one that really resonated with me at a time whenever I was really struggling with the fact that I couldn't practice medicine at the level I used to, and then eventually I couldn't at all. But I was struggling to see, like, what was going on, and I realizing that maybe God was using this to show His strength in my weakness. But the verse you're referring to, Genesis, where it talks about harm, I felt that verse really spoke to me because I kind of felt like, I had this brain injury. Like you said, the thing I had relied on to achieve what I had achieved was taken from me, and it appeared like it would harm me. But God spoke to me after that and changed my heart, and has turned it into a good thing.
Wow. So your life really has been divided into two eras now, before the accident and after the accident. You had a near-death experience, and now this has produced this whole new life and new perspective on life. How has it changed the way that you look at life?
Yeah, you said it right there. Perspective. My perspective on many things has changed. I mean, the whole live every day like it's your last. I mean, that's what everybody thinks of when they get perspective. That's true for me. But my perspective has changed on weaknesses and trials. I'm viewing those more as like, what is God trying to teach me? No, well, not why is He doing this? What is He trying to teach me through this trial or through this weakness? And the other perspective I had is that just the way I perceive people, I look at people as God's children. Yeah.
Well, we are delighted that you're a part of our community. You had obviously great impact on people's lives as a doctor, and I believe that God has a purpose for you, and you're going to have even greater impact on the other side of all of this, and we're just thrilled that you're a part of it. Thanks for sharing your story. Can we thank Dr. Jeff Huxford? Thanks, man.